Cool. Hey, does everybody get one of these?
Yeah, you can. All right,
Should be a
so-
short meeting.
Yeah, it's recording, so,
This is the.
This is
Prospect
37 Prospect
Yeah.
Street.
yeah, I just made copies of the application for everybody, and on the back was the initial email.
So, I'll make a motion to open the Shade Tree Commission meeting for December 11th, 2022.
I second it.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
And, so we have one new application. It's, 2024-09 for 37 Prospect Street. And, people had a chance to read it. It's, asking to remove one sugar maple and 4 other trees. This was an application that was submitted earlier, 2 years ago. I couldn't find the exact date.
Wasn't that, it wasn't many years ago, it was about a year ago.
But,
That's my recollection.
I thought so. When I looked at them, like, talked about this, but it's, you know, they said, that's taken down before, there's some fungus growing on it, moss. And so, but I was interested in your thoughts on.
Yeah, the tree is entirely viable and the moss and the lichen
It doesn't hurt the tree, right?
harmless.
That's what okay, thank you. That's, like, they grow on trees that are doing fine.
So this is another example of someone who wants to remove a tree that has some merit. Who,
Yeah, we saw this application before.
Yeah.
who colors his request in language that's just not justifiable. And, you know, I mean, it's, I gotta take the front, I'm not that stupid, we're
And,
not.
there was an email sent to us earlier. I contacted Nicole today about it. The village is planning to put a sidewalk in, but they don't know what, they have not decided on if they're cutting the trees down or anything else.
They have no new information.
So I don't think we should be deciding before, if the village wants to cut the trees down, then they can cut them down. But I don't think, in my opinion, just because they're putting a sidewalk in, I don't think we cut the trees down ahead of time.
And can't the trees go closer to the road and, I mean, the sidewalk go closer to the road than where those trees are?
It depends on the sidewalk plan, I think, and what the right of way is, right? So that's, we don't have control of that. You know, that's what
Yep.
the village decides.
Those trees are pretty much under the street wires anyway.
All but one of them, I thought the one, the Chinese elm is not, wasn't there one that was like in the yard, I think? No, I think there's a row of trees.
The one in the yard is the sugar maple.
Oh, it is, okay, so
That's a quality tree.
Yeah, yeah, that's, yeah, so there was one in the yard and then the rest are underneath those.
Yeah.
plants. They're kind.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of value other than a little bit of canopy. It hangs over the road like he describes. Is it gonna fall over in the next snowfall? Probably not.
I was,
But they will be a problem for anybody constructing a sidewalk, and they would probably prefer to remove them. Put the sidewalk in and maybe plant something
I mean,
in their place.
right, is it worth like maybe suggesting that like approving removal of those trees? With the condition that something's planted further back that won't be in the way of the sidewalk
Well-
while we have a moment to do that, or is it better to just?
I would rather do that than to just leave it.
I don't love getting the application back that's exactly the same as before, and it's like, I want a
I
different.
mean, I was also wondering, you know, it looks like there are lots of trees there, and
Yeah.
at some point, will they need to be thinned out? Because there's too many trees,
Some
so
are
dense.
small, like
Some are small.
underneath the 6-inch rule.
Yeah, but would it be beneficial if you said, okay, those trees look like they just grew there? They were never planted.
Volunteers, yeah.
And, you know, maybe come up with a plan that cut some of them down at least, or cut them all down and move some of them back, or, you know, I'm interested in people who know more about this.
So this gentleman's my neighbor, so I know him a little bit. I do know that he wants to put solar in, so that's his, I think that's his push. Is that this is the second time he's really wanted to put solar in, so I don't think they've said, no, you've got too many trees. So I think that's what's behind us, even though it doesn't say that here, I believe that's the motivation, not just like cut trees down to cut trees down.
Well, why wouldn't you have mentioned that in the application?
Don't know. But I know that's what he.
It's a better reason than there's moss on my trees.
I guess he said solar last time, so.
He did.
Trying moss this
He
time.
did say that last time, but, you know. Don't know if that's really something he'll follow through on.
Yeah. And I guess that's my only thought is that, I mean, I think that sugar maple should be saved. I think the other trees, maybe we could. Because it does appear that a sidewalk will bring, just the process of cutting that sidewalk is gonna damage those trees. We know this from experience, like. It happened elsewhere, we've seen that, so.
And so what's the potential for planting from, how many trees, if they're taking down 4 trees, I don't think we want to plant that many more trees there.
And you're not, it wouldn't be smart to until the sidewalk is constructed. You gotta know exactly where that is. And where any space, any green space might be, especially in relation to the overhead wires.
We could suggest further back, like towards the house, there's space in the yard. That would be a sensible place, because, yeah, I think getting anywhere near where there potentially be sidewalk.
Also, because the wires are on that side, so even planting, if they did put a green space in there,
Yeah.
the type of trees we would want to plant there would
Be
be
more compact,
more compact. If we go back 10 feet,
not to shade tree.
Well, his desire for solar panels on the roof, you know, gotta have something that is low growing and.
Or just have something that's not good for, you know, gonna start out at 10 feet tall and not block the panels for 20 years. That's the other, it won't be his problem.
and by the time the trees get big enough to interfere with the panels, you're gonna have to replace the panels anyway.
That's what I'm saying. It would be, and it'll be 20 years plus if he gets a decent sized tree in there.
Okay, that sounds like a plan.
So what,
So I guess I would say something like, you know, removal of the 4 trees, the 4 low quality trees under the power lines. Is contingent on replacement with a shade tree elsewhere on the property.
within 20 feet of the
Within
road?
20 feet of the road, that, so it's right.
What would the village, or whoever's subcontracted to do the sidewalk,
Mhm.
would it be in their purview to replace trees along the sidewalk they
It
build?
looks like
In other words, are there specifications in that contract that?
it's not made, yeah.
It's not made yet, but my guess is no.
Well, didn't I see some new trees along Henry W. Du Bois?
Yeah,
and how- Oh, sorry.
That was a separate grant that funded the trees.
Oh,
So they planted over 100 trees
Wow,
along Henry W.
100? Haven't driven down there in a while.
They could have done a better job.
I mean, it was a rush job because the ground was freezing.
Yeah, I did talk to the supervisor. They're guaranteed for a year. So they, a year from now, if there's mortality, they have to replace the trees.
Was that negotiated with the homeowners? So like the homeowner said, hey, I get this, or I want this, or I
Yes.
like this. Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah. That was a nice thing. 'Cause I know the homeowners were some of them were bereft.
Yes, so they reached out to each of the homeowners and they got to pick if they wanted them and they're not planted on the homeowner's property.
Right, they're on the right way.
They're out of the right of way, so they're owned
Oh, I
by
see.
the
So they're
homeowner.
actually,
Yeah, they got to choose
yeah,
the,
I see.
well, they got to pick this, the overall species list was, we looked at it as a shade tree commission.
Yeah.
They're all native species.
Yeah.
But then they got to pick from that list and did they want a tree or did they want a bush?
Yeah.
And so, but that's a separate issue.
It's good to get that many new trees in the village.
Yes,
we counted that in our Arbor Day count, right? When we
Um,
submitted, It's like, I mean,
I don't know if we did.
should.
The only thing Heather was looking for was the
How
amount
many
of trees that had been
weeds?
removed,
Oh, I see, great.
so.
Not, that doesn't even
Yeah.
include what we've, like today, if we're saying, okay, you need to plant a tree, that doesn't. But I'm interested in maybe keeping track of that, and then we'll get there later on. I'm putting a list together of that. So,
Thank you.
but, so the motion would be we deny the sugar maple removal, but we approve the removal of the 4 other trees contingent upon planting another shade tree. Or do we want to list the species?
Yeah, we could, maybe we just say like species list available or something.
Yeah, that's good.
Of 2.5 to 3 inch diameter.
No, it's not, it's too big. They're not
Okay.
gonna manage that 2.5 to 3, so that's fine. 500-pound football.
Okay,
Well, I like to say it should be 2 inch or better.
okay, so
You know, if somebody comes up with a 1 3/4 inch stem in a,
We've never measured what people put in.
yeah,
yeah, but bigger than what they planted at
And ball,
Salvation Army.
yeah, ball and burlap should be stipulated instead of like, I mean, you can get like 1.5 inches in a can.
you
But it's
could
a
also,
tiny tree.
they're occasionally up to 2 inches in a 30-gallon or a large
Yeah.
container, and that, they could be good.
Oh, my God. When I can avoid.
Well, I would, yeah, absolutely.
Prefer, if we're gonna say, we might as well say ball and burlap.
All right, 2 inch or better.
Okay,
Do you wanna use that application to write it down? You can use whichever one, that's fine.
I didn't bring.
Pen? I have a pen.
No. But, you know, I haven't.
Fine, request number 1.
Oh, I'm saying, maple removal denied. Number 1, 4 others, number 3, approved contingent on planting. A 2 inch diameter,
2 inch or better.
20 feet from the road.
Well, again, that's not a project, you know,
And it depends on where they put the sidewalk.
yeah.
It's not, it may never happen too, because it was originally planned in that renovation of the sidewalk. The other stretch, and then I believe what happened was that the cost was like that between when they initially proposed it. When it actually was happening, the cost was astronomical.
and our, the shade tree law is within the road, from the road edge, not the sidewalk edge. So, you know, we can just say within 20 feet of the edge of the road, the current road, because that's all we have.
Did
control.
Henry W. Du Bois edge change during this? It seemed like some things were moved over a little bit to the north to make room for this
Yes.
extra wide
Yeah,
bike path.
it moved within the right of way, so the road moved to the north.
Yeah,
And so they had to meet their requirements for the width of the roadway.
I'm just wondering if that'll happen in this case.
That added a lot of money to the project. My guess is no. I think one of the reasons that they're focusing on this type of sidewalk project is that I don't think they're gonna put a green space in between. Basically, I think they're just widening the road and putting in a barrier. But I don't, then,
Sometimes that green space is only 30 inches wide from the edge of the road to the edge of the sidewalk.
yeah. And so I'm just saying within planting a 2 inch or better tree within 20 feet of the road edge. Anything else? Do we want to specify from our list of trees
You have
or
2-inch diameter? That
Yes.
might help.
2-inch diameter or better?
You can say, available, that we have a list of trees that would be appropriate, available for them to look at.
Right.
Or maybe even say that a shade tree commission person can suggest or, come and help them choose. If they'd like, I wouldn't mind doing that, if I can walk.
There's a STC will give advice if one. And
Yeah.
that's it, so.
Good.
Any seconds,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Did you sign?
not yet.
Okay. These people interested in shade tree commission?
Neil?
Yes,
This is Adam Watson, and I think he's here to represent 43 Center Street. Is that right, Adam?
Yes, this is Mr. Khan, he's the owner of 43 Center.
So they would like to consider for us to reconsider their request. Actually, we've been considering it. I don't think that we,
I think you were gonna,
well, you've seen my note, right? You've seen my letter,
okay,
both to Mr. Watson and to the attorney.
and so I don't know if you wanna say something or if you wanna say something, but like,
Well, let's hear from the homeowner first.
Yes,
Wants to hear from you.
I'm sorry.
He'd like to hear from you about the tree, I don't know what he.
You have a request for a permit to remove trees?
Yes,
Can you describe?
yeah, I see over there, I request by, irritating.
Adam, you want to speak for him?
I think Mr. Khan's son has been dealing with this more than.
Okay.
Steve has been the one dealing with it, he's out of state right now, so it's.
Okay, but you could speak for
So,
him.
yeah, so, okay, I think I originally went back there in October to answer the question that was in the email about the attorney. Yes, I was there. Yes, I saw the trees.
Yeah,
I understand that some of the wording was the same.
right.
That is what it is. I'm not gonna say too much on
And
that.
I talked to Adam. Adam is a legitimate arborist and he has some knowledge and skills, period.
I'm not good with wording, fancy documents and like that, but I've been doing tree work for 19 years. I've been certified arborist for, what did I say, 2008, I think, like something around there. So anyway, I went to look at the trees. I think it was in October at some point. The sugar maple, which is the larger one, is more of a concern than the Norway maple, because of its size. And the main thing that sticks out to me is how it grows. When a tree grows from one main stem and splits off into two like equal leaders, it's called codominant leaders, and it gets included bark. You can see at the base of the tree where there's rot and so there's that factor. I mean, I spoke with Dwight about possibly cabling it, but my opinion with seeing the amount of dead wood that's in the tree and the rot at the base of the tree, the codominant leaves.
I gotta disagree with you on, you're characterizing it as rot. I don't see that.
Well, the defects.
Yeah, there are
The
defects.
defects, okay. It's hard to say whether there's rot. I mean, I didn't notice any mushrooms on the roots or anything like that, that's. Sometimes you can't tell till you cut in whether it's brown rot or whatever it may be, but. And so the main leader that would fail, in my opinion, would go towards, I believe is that a cottage or is that a garage? A garage, okay, decent size one, I wasn't sure if it was a cottage. Go towards that, Dwight and I talked about trimming some of the branches that are going towards the new house that they're building. I think that's more of a concern. But it sounds like Mr. Khan and his son are concerned with the garage, the house, and also the dead branches falling on the sidewalk, and liability seems to be a big issue for them. So that's the sugar maple. The Norway maple, I mean, it's a smaller diameter. It's not, and the Norway maple, I believe, are invasive species here in New York, but I'm fine with leaving that one. I mean, that one, the roots were disturbed.
And like White said, when I met him out there, I totally agree with what you said. There's no sense taking that down right now. The amount of roots that were cut, like dying might not, but why take it down with it might die? The sugar maple, I think it's going to die. I can't tell you when. I don't think anybody will be able to. But with the storms we get nowadays, I wouldn't want that tree over my house or garage,
As it stands now,
as it stands now.
you have
Yes.
to agree. As it stands now, it has so many, many defects. It has some dead material in the ground. Dead wood eventually falls, could hurt somebody, dent cars, do all kinds of things.
But were those the effects of the construction,
No.
putting the driveway?
No, this is just
The Norway maple was.
like, this is decline from a tree that's 100+ years old in a tough situation where sidewalks and pavement and temperature, salt and this and that. It's, you know, in my opinion, the tree, notwithstanding the root damage, the tree is viable.
And this is the one in the center of the two.
The largest
The large,
the largest one, and it's right facing the street next to the sidewalk. That it's viable and that if one were to do a thorough pruning, removing dead limbs, broken limbs, and cutting back those limbs that extend over the buildings, that you might get a good result. So you have a tree that remains viable and a tree that the hazard level has been reduced to something that people can live with. Can't ever reduce it to zero. But bring it down to where it's clearly not going to fall apart.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but under the village code, unless you're like removing the whole top of the tree, you're allowed to prune
Sure.
trees,
Well, it's maintenance.
maintenance. And so,
And you're trying to limit your liability and improve safety.
yeah, and you're expected to do.
You're expected to do that? I would think so, yes.
So if someone is very concerned about the liability and the risk, they're allowed to prune their trees. They don't need to come before the Shade Tree Commission. You can't. Well, what's the word, like, you
Topic.
can't top the tree,
Yeah.
but if you're worried about certain branches falling off and protecting your.
Right.
Your property, that's not the excuse for cutting down a tree. You already have permission under the law to prune it, and prune it the right way. That,
Well, it's going, you know, in order to satisfy me in terms of the liability, bringing the liability and the hazard level down to something you can live with, it's a lot of pruning.
And it's gonna be continued maintenance.
but is it so much?
Well, you do this thoroughly, and you may not have to revisit that tree for 5 to 10 years. You have to monitor it, there might be another dead limb appearing, there might be a storm where a limb folds and breaks. But
Is there so much pruning that it will kill the tree, or can you prune enough that it's?
no, but here's the
Solve
thing,
both problems.
with the root damage. With the cutting of the roots, the extremities of the root. We can't guarantee that this tree thrives through the next 5 seasons.
Survives, you wanna say survives, right? I mean, there's potential, the stress, these are two stressors. that
Yes,
we're
it's
proposing.
just, it's one more stressor to this, these pair of trees.
Mhm.
And I could understand somebody not wanting to invest. The pruning and cabling that ought to be done to make these trees an asset and limit the liability.
So.
Because you can't guarantee that the tree's going to survive.
So from a long-term perspective, does it make more sense to take that down now and plant another tree that you know will survive?
Well, look, listen, this is what we're here for, you know, if it's not gonna survive and has to be removed, damn right, we wanna see other trees replaced in that spot.
Right, but there's a little bit of an unknowable component there that like this tree's been damaged by the root damage. It was not properly cordoned off when construction was occurring. Right, and that's kind of what we assessed.
Yeah, but it's quite a lot of root that remains. I mean, you
Yeah.
know, it's 6, 7, 8 feet out in each direction.
Mhm.
That's how they move big trees
Yeah.
for the estates in the 1930s and 40s when labor was cheap.
Yeah.
They hand dug these things
Yeah,
and then,
but they didn't have 100% survival rate either.
No, to kind of add to what you were just saying about, the, like, it's called like a tree protection zone when you're doing construction work.
Yeah.
With the area that I saw there, I mean, I didn't particularly look for this, but just from what I remember, from what I saw, I don't think anything was really disturbed underneath or around the tree. Any further than they had to go with the construction of the house, like
Yeah.
but that's a really good point. A lot of people don't think of that when they have a construction zone is to establish that tree protection zone because, I mean, what percentage of the root system is it that's only a few inches under the ground that provides?
well, most of it is within the top 24 inches of soil.
I think it's even, yeah, it is, right. So you take away from that or you add to that and it can really hurt the tree. It's not something that usually happens right away, people don't realize that, they're like, oh, I built my house, and this guy said my tree was gonna die, and it didn't die, because a year, even 2 years later, it's still alive, and it's gonna slowly decline.
Where you don't have soil removal, you still have like significant compaction of the roots.
Exactly.
And that is
Yeah,
it's stressful to trees, maybe not deadly, but stressful.
so can I ask a question, it's probably not the time, but I heard you talking about the other place there, and I mean, this doesn't go for helping with Mr. Conrad, well, it does in a way, but you're suggesting in some of these cases to plant trees, and I think that's great, and I like Dwight's suggestion of 2 inch. Are there any kind of guidelines or parameters for when or how it's planted? Because if somebody just goes out there with a 2 inch tree and throws it in the ground, in the middle of the summer when it's during a drought and they don't water it. And they don't plant it properly, they plant it too deep, they plant it too shallow.
Yeah, there is.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I'm
We have a
just
list.
suggesting stuff to you.
No, we have a list of recommended trees based on species that we've picked out, and if there's power lines and not power lines, but also we recommend that they're usually done within a year, but usually in the spring or the fall. So like what now, we would probably be recommending it gets planted within a year, but either in the
Well,
spring or the fall.
Are we to instruct everybody how to plant, where to plant, when to plant? I mean,
Or could you put something in there that says, I mean, I don't know, it's just totally not.
it's a relevant point to
Yeah.
survival of newly planted trees.
Usually they hire someone to do it and they know what they're doing.
About a year and a half ago, I planted a spruce tree for the town of Rosedale. I donated it and planted it for a Christmas tree for the town. And, one of the things where the tree farm that I got it from, one of their policies is they'll guarantee it for, I think it was a year. But if you cut that metal basket or that burlap or disturb that in any way, then it's not warranted anymore. So there's a lot of, yeah, which
the wire basket.
they want you to leave it. I did not make that, to be honest with you.
That's how they get out of it. Get out of their guarantee.
Before they have their roots knotted.
I did it last year, yeah, and they're still in that wire mesh and the burlap.
That's a soil pH thing, like some places where the soil pH is
So I
different.
think part of the reason is because if you're, I don't know how to say this nicely, but if you're not. I don't know, and you take that wire mesh off and that burlap. All the dirt falls out, and all the roots break and everything like that, like if you take it off before you put it in the hole and you're planting the one that I planted with a, burlap sack that big, you have to pick up with equipment, there's a lot of variables, so.
Mhm.
Maybe it's in their best interest to have that policy, I don't know.
I mean, that stuff doesn't disintegrate like people say it does.
It's hold up, I've read about trees.
I think we're off topic.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I'm,
It's not a bad idea that there's, like, maybe we could provide some
we
more.
could put some directions together for people.
Guidelines,
We have
even if
all
they're
the
not,
same
like,
episodes
this
if you
is-
want.
You know,
We have
what
a
is it,
website.
On the village, let's say, yeah.
the,
So then that could go on our
National
website.
Arbor Day Foundation? they have a little booklet, a little pamphlet with, you know, fold out 3-page
Mm,
thing.
Has directions there.
We can,
Yeah,
we can
how to
put
plan,
links
how
to
to
that.
plan. You know,
Stabilize the tree, you know, I mean, if it's.
But I'm interested in Dwight's opinion on this, like, what's the best long-term plan? for
I
this?
can't answer that, with I can't definitively answer that. It's, if it were my tree, I know what I'd do. I would prune, cable, protect, cut back, get clearance over the roofs. That, it would be a different tree than what stands there now. It would be safer and it would have a chance to live. I can't say that it will because of many things, most important, some root damage, adding to the stress of the tree. Not enough rainfall through the whole month of October, November till now.
Yeah,
You know, the contractor did a pretty good job in backfilling around the tree when he got to regrading.
It looks like.
So the work to save these trees and make them safe could be lost,
I think.
could be lost. But that's what I would do first. I have the skill set and the equipment and such.
In the, you would do that in the position that you're in, or in the position of a homeowner that doesn't do tree work for a living?
Well, there's people you can hire, you're one
I
of them.
know, I'm just asking
I
that
know.
question because, you know.
I think it's hard for the homeowner, you know, you can hire somebody who's. There aren't many people with the skill set required to maintain and repair. And enhance trees.
I agree.
Most of everybody out there, their skill set is to
Yeah.
remove trees, and that's why. You know, every lawyer or every request for tree removal comes with. You know, all these bogus reasons why they have to remove the tree. No one's talking about remediating any of the tree issues.
Yeah.
They can, in many cases, they can be remediated,
You know why? Because they don't know how.
most
And I
likely.
think that's like, you know, if you don't have experience with the Shade Tree Commission, like, that's, I think, probably one of the things we're most successful at,
yeah,
is asking, you know, so what happens is, people, they buy a property, they've never lived here, they look at it, they're like, oh, let's cut those trees down. And they put an application in, and we're like, no. And because, and then I think they live there for a little while, or they move in and like, oh, actually, these trees are kind of nice. And then they don't cut the trees in, or they think that the trees, oh, these trees are dying. It's like, well, it's January and the tree's not dead.
So I'm not trying to talk myself out of, I still think the tree should come down, based on my opinion. I respect your opinion greatly, you know, you've been doing tree work a lot longer than I have, but, where does it go with this? I agree with what you're saying, with the people don't understand the value of the tree sometimes until after it's gone. I think what you're doing is great, you know, I don't even know if I'm gonna get the job from these guys, to be honest with you, they're not paying me to do this, I'm just here giving you my opinion.
I mean, our job
Giving
is,
them a proposal to take the tree.
our job is not to say no to every application, it's to
Right.
say, okay, look at it, and does it make the most sense to cut it down or prune it?
My
And
opinion, yes.
this one seems like it's one of the more complicated ones we've had, because there's.
Yeah.
I think the only thing weighing against, I mean, I tend to generally agree with you that like. The chances of this tree isn't 100% with all of the work being done, and then you're still done the work and you still have a tree that continues to present a hazard. But I think the thing that weighs against that is this is a particularly big shade tree. The big old shade tree, and we don't have as many of those left in the village, and so it represents a loss of shade tree cover for the
Makes
village.
sense.
So that's why we're kind of, I think that's why everyone's kind of going, oh, let's look at this a little more carefully.
Yeah. And the other side of it, isn't it, to me, but Mr. Conlon and his son are concerned with the liability portion of it.
Understood?
But that's what I was trying to bring up
As we
earlier,
would
like,
be.
if you're worried about the liability, you can prune it. You're allowed to prune it, you know, you don't even need our permission to prune trees.
But then, if that's done and the tree still fails and hurts somebody or damages something, then who's liable?
I mean, but the alternative is there are no trees in the village.
Yeah.
Right,
I get
and
it, I get it.
that's like, they've done these studies where they've looked at, cost benefits of like, yes, let's remove the trees near the roads and on streets because we don't want them falling down. But the costs outweigh the benefits outweigh the costs. Having those trees there adds more value than liability.
Yeah.
Because, the shade, the cooling, the retention for water, and they have so many more benefits,
Oxygen.
mental health for everyone that's walking on the street. It's not all about just, no trees. If they did that, then
No, it's a tough, topic, because I talk to that about a lot of my customers that I meet, everybody's question is the tree gonna hit my house? It's in reach of your house, or even close to within reach of your house, I mean, yeah, it could. I can tell you whether it appears to be healthy from the ground, I could do an aerial inspection, there's a lot of things you can do, but you can't, like Dwight said, you can't guarantee it. I think you were talking about the other case before where, it appears to be healthy, but you can't say whether it's gonna break or not, or when it might. You can eliminate the risk, you can.
You can eliminate those.
No, you can't eliminate, you can reduce it, that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, but we reduce it to a level where you can live with it. There's other trees that will hit the con house,
Absolutely.
just the sugar maple just to the east of it.
Yeah, it's a.
I don't know, is that somebody else's?
The trees, I'm not sure.
That sugar maple, is in
Yeah.
similar condition.
I didn't even walk on the other side. of that.
Similar condition, it's like,
Yeah, my neighbor one is a big giant tree. She's more, probably, couple. Say.
right, but we can take allow the permit. You can remove the two maples and your house can still be hit by that one that
Yeah, yeah.
you have no control over.
Yeah, absolutely.
So. This is a tough choice, if I can sum it up. You can remove the trees, removing the liability. And ask the homeowner to replace 2, maybe even 3 shade trees, 2 inches or better. So that we can begin immediately regrowing the canopy that's typical of that street and should happen, or usually pruning and cabling, even though it's difficult, costs less than complete removal. Because you're not removing all of this large wood, you're not handling it, cutting it, picking it up, taking it somewhere, paying to dispose of it in certain cases. So it's a money saving to a certain extent. Yes, you might have to reprune 6, 8 years later. But that's your choice. If you do a very thorough pruning and cabling, you save a few dollars. You reduce the liability to a very manageable level. You remove the limbs that are immediately over your house and the other building. You shorten the limbs that are above that, leaving enough growth points for regrowth in the spring. But with the caveat that we don't know how viable this tree is because of the root loss and the mini drought.
You can
we had.
really never know with
You never know, but I think
every
the
tree.
odds are against this tree. With the damage that it had, the damage that it had with the cavities in the tree and the codominant leaves and the construction that was done there. And then it could not even come back this spring,
It's possible,
but
but there is remediation for all of those issues.
Yeah, but then I worry, like, if the tree then just dies or it just falls down, then we may not be able to plant any trees.
It's not gonna fall down.
No,
Once
it's
it's
not
cut
in that
back
bad
and
shape.
cabled in, it's not just gonna fall down.
I would just like to say something that most of the time, when a tree that is like that tree, that's too big, its branches are very large and some of them are dead and this and that, and it has serious pruning, it turns into a gorgeous, much healthier, strong tree.
When it's done right, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, I mean, there is the possibility of that, and I think it's as much of a possibility of being able to save that tree and have it turn into a beautiful tree that someone would be happy to have on their property. Because most of the time, if you, you look in this area, I guess we're tree huggers, tree lovers in this area, and New Paltz is a tree city. We have that designation because we have so many beautiful and old shade trees that create the character of our town. I'm all for at least trying to save it, because a lot of times also, somebody comes and they want to move in. They have never had really a big piece of property. They are not used to having trees, around. And so we say, no, don't, cut those trees down. You'll probably regret it. And then later on, they're like, I love this. This is a gorgeous tree. It gives me all this shade. It's, gives character to my property. But if you're not used to living in an area that has a lot of trees, I mean, I will say that I have, Dwight, I have trees that are over 100 feet tall that have been there for 50 years. And some of them, yeah, they would land right on my house, but am I gonna cut down all the trees in my, beautiful woods? No, I certainly am not.
Yeah, I have trees like they at my house and they there.
Yeah, and I'm not,
As far as
for me, I think it's more important to try to save the tree. The people whose property, that would be your property, right? You just might, find out that this turns into a beautiful tree, which is an asset to your property, your street, and the community.
I believe, I don't think they're new to the area.
It does increase property values. Having especially a mature tree, certainly one that's well maintained and pruned. So,
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest drive around and look at some of the properties and the trees, some of them old. And,
sounds like,
Let's get back to task at hand.
okay,
but it sounds like, that it seems like there's at
that's
least
my
some
opinion.
consensus that the focus, maybe try pruning it and maintaining it. And then,
Well, it's gonna be up to the homeowner, and I have no, I am uncomfortable with this tree as it is. So we would need assurance that measures will be taken. If measures aren't gonna be taken, I'm not gonna, this tree's a hazard.
So who are you gonna put this liability on then? It sounds like you're trying to put this liability, if you want insurance, now I'm not trying, if you want
so
insurance.
under the, I can read the village code, but under the village code, owners are required to maintain trees for safety reasons.
Yeah, but nobody is.
Yes.
Nobody is doing the preemptive pruning.
Right,
But what Neil is saying is the liability falls on that homeowner. That's
For not doing the maintenance.
right, that's where the liability would be.
Okay, so you would want, like I was saying, you would want insurance that the homeowner is going to have it done correctly. To reduce the risk of it failing. Who's gonna
What can we
determine, and then if I do it, somebody else does it. And it still fails, then what, then the liability's on me because I did the work and I didn't do it properly?
No, I doubt that, but.
I mean, I don't think that would happen, I'm just saying, that's. I mean, I understand what you're saying too, because there's a lot of guys out there, weekend warriors, whatever you wanna call them, that, claim to be, arborists or whatever they may claim to be, but.
I'm not a lawyer, but, my understanding is if, it's pointed out to you that your tree, or that you think your tree is a hazard, you're the one that brought up the issue, so it's your responsibility to maintain it, like, so, like I said, I'm not a lawyer, but like if I told my neighbor, I think your tree is a danger and it's gonna hurt my house, then they have to do something about it.
Yes.
If it then falls on my house, they're liable. But if I don't point out to them that it's a danger and it just falls on my house,
Okay.
it's not, I've had trees fall on my car.
So to that point, you're right, from what I know, and I'm not a lawyer either. As far as I know, I agree with what you're saying, so what the homeowner did was to contact a professional. And. You know, to do something about it, that which is maybe, I guess, and my suggestion is take it down and plant a new tree. It's Dwight's suggestion to prune it and cable it, that's not my suggestion,
That's my,
respectfully.
that's my first suggestion. My second is to take it down and remove and replant with 2 or 3 solid 2.5-inch caliber trees. So I'm on the fence, you know, I'm just saying, yes, I think these trees are worthy. Yes, I think they can be managed properly. And that's what I would choose first.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if we're not gonna do enough pruning and cabling in these trees, there could be an accident, there could be a failure, limb failure. Or a big split even.
Yeah.
Well, we've outlined what the 2 possibilities are.
Yeah. And you know something, I've outlined them pretty well, but I don't have a vote. I'm not on the committee, I am the.
I mean, to me, it sounds
So-
like there's 2 arborists telling us that that's a reasonable course of action, to remove and replant. 2 arborists have said that. I mean, that.
I would prefer, because these trees are
Yeah,
100 years
but
old.
I'm
I
saying,
would
2
prefer that.
arborists who have professional opinions that carry more weight than our sort of average citizen. The advice to us has been remove and replant, prune and cable, so both of those are possible, but it just seems to me like. You know, ultimately, the homeowner wanting to remove it also kind of has to factor into this, and I'm not sure that I want to fight them on that.
No, and also one, we have a guaranteed outcome versus the other one is, we're not sure of the outcome.
Yeah,
I mean, I would love to encourage the homeowner to consider that course of action, is trying it. I think that we've definitely discussed that it's a viable option.
Yeah.
if you think you could go ahead with that, maybe you can encourage Mr. Khan to try that course of action. And I will volunteer my time to assist you, or not do any work, but to suggest this, that, and the other thing.
And it's also cheaper, like, that's a cheaper way to go than removing and replanting. But if the homeowner, if that's what they really want,
Potentially.
is to
Yeah.
remove and replant, it's gonna cost more, but it's a guaranteed outcome. I would almost feel
And-
if they wanted to prune the tree and we were telling them, what if we were trying to say, no, we're gonna require you to take it down and replant new trees? And they said, well, it's not fair, it's gonna cost me more.
Well, there's one other aspect, Neil, I want you to consider, and that's the liability issue, and what you say is really reasonable, and maybe we can assume that from the code. But if we deny the permits, let's say he's thinking about doing the pruning, let's say he farms it out and gets 3 estimates, maybe chooses a lesser expensive,
Yeah.
or maybe just in the meantime, there is a storm, the tree fails, somebody gets hurt.
I agree 100%.
The only thing on record is he was denied the permit.
That's it.
And the liability, you know,
I agree 100%. And that's like why the other alternative is it's a guaranteed outcome. Like, cut the trees, you replant it, like, so in some ways that carries some weight as well.
So maybe our resolution could be changed to say we approve removal if that as a last resort. Homeowner has the discretion to either prune and cable to industry standards,
Yeah.
should we say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
sounds
that
good.
sounds great.
I'd
And
love to
then,
see that happen.
let's
try.
and if the
Try to
trees
save it.
are removed, that they be replaced.
Now, are we talking about both trees now, or just, are we still gonna leave the Norway?
That's up to you.
I mean, I agree with what you said with the Norway, the amount of roots that were disturbed and the size, the caliber of
Yeah,
the tree.
But it has dead limbs in it also needs to be pruned.
Yeah, but I think it's more viable than the.
It is more viable, but again, prudence,
Can't kill it.
pruning,
Or Norway,
get rid of dead wood and to shorten up some of the length of
Yeah.
those limbs.
And now's a good time to do it, so I'd say we leave the Norway for now.
Okay, and how many trees to replace, one tree or two trees for that tree that is?
Well, you gotta respect the space that Norway is taking up, so maybe there's only room for one then.
Okay.
If there were both removed, you could probably space it with three, but. Look, I just wanna get something going so that any tree that's removed in the village. We're gonna see at least another one planted
I agree.
for future canopy.
So I'm okay with that resolution or a motion to modify our resolution for that application.
Yeah.
Where we approve the removal of
Sugar
the
maple.
sugar maple.
Yeah.
Contingent on planting another tree within 20 feet of the road,
2-inch ball and burlap
2-inch
shade tree.
fallen burlap shade tree. What you said before was, they can either prune it, and ball it to industry standards, or they can remove it contingent on planting a new tree.
I think
Yeah,
so.
that's a good idea, so that we can go on record saying our first choice is to prune, cable. The street could be viable.
But we also we can't know that that's gonna save it, and this gives the homeowner an option.
I mean, that's reasonable.
But
You're gonna have to take time to write all that out.
Yeah,
yeah, I know,
but I mean, that sounds good. Offer the two
Play it back, right?
choices and
Can't
hopefully.
can't we just get this
Like,
all?
Yeah, they have the transcript that comes
Right.
up, but it's not
It's
great,
not great,
yeah.
This turned into a big,
I think we have the gist of what we're.
yeah.
Yeah, I can, I'll go back and sort of listen, and what I'll do is I'll send an email just to be sure I have the
Okay.
wording correct.
so second
Thank you so much.
on the motion,
One second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
And thank you all for sort of taking more time to kind of hash this out with us, and we
Mhm.
appreciate it. More information is always better.
I don't envy what you guys do, now that I see a little bit of what you guys do, and I think it's amazing, I think it's great what you guys do to.
And the goal is to get people to kind of step back and, do the best thing, not just the thing that's the easiest.
Right, absolutely.
And also to appreciate the older, big trees that are in this town,
Yeah, there's a
in this
lot.
village. There are a
There's a-
lot, but you wouldn't believe how many people want to cut them down.
Before starting my own business, I worked for another company for Lewis for 13 years. We did all the trimming for Central Hudson, and that was a whole other aspect of tree work.
Ugh.
So, well, I thought of it, when
Complain
one of
about
you were
that.
talking about, removing, like, you can't remove all the risk, but you have to remove basically all the trees. So
Yeah.
people think the same thing with the power lines, right? They're like, take it back 10 feet, 15 feet and all the way up as high as you can reach, or, take every tree, 10 feet back, and all you're doing is opening it up for other trees to come from further back.
They've
And take
mutilated
the
some
wires
like
out,
beautiful trees.
more is not always best, it really isn't.
No, and what we would see,
To tell the Public Service Commission in Central Hudson that is like talking to a brick
well,
wall.
we would see, like Central Hudson would come in, say, year one, and they say, oh, we have to trim 10 feet back from the wires. And we're allowed to do that, and then we would, but then, like, what's the cycle? Every 3, 4, 5 years, they come back and redo the same
Yeah,
road. The trees didn't grow that much in 3 or 4 or 5 years, but then they trimmed it back even more.
yeah.
So then it went from like 10 feet to 12 feet, and then like 4 years later, they trimmed back another 2 feet, and
I did
suddenly.
it for 13 years. Before I left, I was a supervisor there, but I did a lot of trimming myself, and it drove me crazy. Like in areas like this in the village of New Paltz and stuff where, they want you to just stick by those guidelines, 10 feet high as you can reach. And it's like, can we have a little bit of like, people's trees in their front yards? Can we like try to make them shape like this, try to like shape the other side so it looked a little aesthetically pleasing, but they didn't like it. They did that. It's all about numbers.
We needed some more trees, boy.
All right, well, so I'm the next one. I'm still working on the spreadsheet, but I'm putting a spreadsheet together of the status of replanting from prior applications. And I'm gonna be up there. I'll be done with it soon, and I think, the House Malou member,
Yes, he called me. He had an emergency thing. He couldn't.
But he's still
He's
potentially
still,
interested.
he's still very interested.
so hopefully, our next meeting is January 8th. And I think usually in January, what we try to do is come up with, think, between now and then, think about places you wanna plant trees. And we can start putting our, spring planting location list together.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
hopefully we can get that done in January, February, and maybe plant in April.
We've certainly planted a lot of trees that have survived and really enhanced the area.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
But that's all we have. Do we do the? Make motion to approve the draft minutes from November 13th, 2024. If anyone has comments,
Second.
I approve.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and motion to adjourn. 6:59, we made it, 1 minute.
Just made it.
Thank you.
Thank
Well
you.
done.